Welcome back, everybody, to the Hobby Musician. Now, before we get into today's episode, we've got some exciting news. We officially have merchandise. That is right. We now are offering all sorts of hoodies and shirts and tote bags and cell phone cases, everything you can imagine, all with our logos and our taglines and all kinds of stuff like that. And what's most exciting, I'm incredibly proud that in there we also have a full line of eco-friendly clothing, clothing made from recycled and sustainable materials. So we're super happy to offer that. So if you want to support the channel, all you got to do is head down into the description box of any one of our videos and you can find a link that'll take you directly to our store. All right, with that out of the way, now let's get on to today's episode. So you might be asking yourself, what could he possibly mean by talking about writing a song that he doesn't want people to listen to? I think it'd be fair to say that maybe 90% of songwriters and performers out there want their songs listened to and paid attention to. Well, here is the situation that I've got for us today. Recently, my department at work was asked to put together a promotional video, like a marketing kind of a thing. And we were asked to do this in-house, so all of our different folks kind of were contributing ideas, and we came up with the idea of just kind of interviewing some people and asking them about their experience with our department and that kind of stuff. And we started getting great responses back. Folks would send back videos of them answering questions and talking about the great experiences they've had with us. And we got really great material. And since I do all the editing for this channel, I offered to kind of put things together and cut together our little promotional video. Well, we didn't get too far into the project until we really noticed that the material was great and the videos were amazing, but the whole experience really just felt sterile and it felt very flat. So I said, well, what if I wrote and recorded some background music? And that is the subject of today's video. What I wanted to do is I actually wanted to film the process. I've got a few ideas for what I want to write for this video, but I wanted to film the trial and error and songwriting process for you guys so you could kind of see the whole method that I go through when I'm thinking about that. But that is the key to what I mean. Background music serves incredibly important purposes whenever you come to a point where you need it, but the entire intent of background music is not the same as when you're just writing a song to be performed. And so I want to take you guys through that. So let's take a look at some of the main things that are requirements of background music. All right, number one, if you're going to want to write background music, you have to use it to be sensitive to the mood, the emotion. Okay, so number one is, what kind of feeling or energy are you trying to support with whatever the background music is going behind? For example, if you're writing a movie score and you're writing this for a scary kind of suspense movie, you're going to want to compose music that evokes that feeling. So tense chord arrangements, maybe schizophrenic rhythm patterns and things like that. Or if you're writing music for a documentary, and let's say the documentary is covering a tragic event or something along those lines, you want to write some music that's somber. I mean, picking a lot of like minor keys and sad sounding music that really supports and carries the feeling. Now, in our case, we want kind of an upbeat, energetic, happy sound. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on later. All right, number two. The second part of writing background music I really find interesting, and that has to do with the interest scale. Now, what I mean by this is music can have different levels of interest. You can write really interesting sounding things, or you can write really boring sounding music. Now, for background songs, you need to hit an absolute middle point. You've got to be able to write a song that falls kind of in the middle of the interest scale. And what I mean by that is you cannot have something super interesting, because if you do, the listener will be drawn to listen to the music and pay attention to the music more than necessarily what they're watching or what else is going on. You also can't write something bad or boring, because if it's too bad and too boring, ironically, that also draws the listener. One way to think of it, and one thing that I've discovered, is that listeners are drawn to the ends of the spectrum. So you can write something super amazing and they're going to want to tune in. You can write something super, super dull or just bad, playing a lot of wrong notes or something. That also draws a listener. So we're going to shoot to try to make something that sounds good, but not too good. Now, the final thing that really is important for this kind of background music, and especially in the particular case that I'm dealing with today, is the idea of sections that can repeat. Now, what I mean by this is I may not know how long this promotional video is going to eventually be. The same thing could be true with movies or documentaries or whatever else you might be writing music for. You need to have flexibility in length. So when you're writing, you need to write with the concept, at least I try to, with the concept of repetition. Can I write maybe 4-bar, 8-bar, 16-bar sections of a song that could sound good played and then sound good repeated and flow and feel like it flows and kind of cycles back on itself? Furthermore, if videos or if the need for the song goes on and on and on, I also need to have multiple sections that each feel different from the one before it, but also feel cohesive. So having difference, but also cohesion is going to be important. So those are kind of the three main things that I try to think about whenever I'm tasked with or approach a background music kind of writing scenario. Okay, with that in mind, now we're going to switch over and I want to take you through some of the specifics, and we're going to kind of put this together in real time. So, all right, I'm going to switch things up here and I'll be back in a jiffy. All right, well, we are here set up. I've got some ideas, and so what I've done on the computer behind me, I've got a GarageBand project pulled up and some samples of things that I've been playing around with just now. Now, when I sit down to write a song like this, just because I'm primarily a bass player, my mind first goes to bass lines and drum beats. And so when I'm thinking about this particular project, I know that I need energy. I want something that pulses and drives along, and I want it to be really kind of sustained. So that informs my bass line choice. So I was thinking along the lines, I want something pulsing, snappy, upbeat. So I was just playing around with just techniques, pulsing techniques. So for example, if I play just a bass line, if I just play eighth notes straight through, that can get boring, but if I add a pulse to it, so if I play like a note longer and another note shorter and kind of intermix those, so if I'm playing like a long, if I take that technique but I speed it up, so if I start to do that over top of just a straight rock drum beat, what that'll do is that'll help to kind of just push the song along, keep the energy up. So that's kind of what I was playing with. And GarageBand, along with some other software, has some really intuitive and pretty fantastic built-in drummers. So I was just playing along with some drum beats that kind of sound just like this. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. 2, 3, 4. So then I can just come along. That kind of thing. So I really wanted to keep the bass line moving, but also simple. I don't want to have a lot of chord changes in this song because, again, as we talked about earlier, I want to keep the interest level medium. So in terms of progressions and things, I'm just keeping things kind of in the key of A, and I'm just going to keep really focusing on that A. I'm going to have a bridge section and different kind of breakdown things coming up, but for the main part, I'm just keeping it pretty simple like that. All right, now for a change of pace, I wanted to have like a bridge section. So I wanted to have that main kind of driving section and then follow it up with a change of pace. That's going to, again, keep it from being too monotonous, but hopefully I'm going to try to keep it from being too interesting either. So in this bridge section, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to stop doing the pulses. So I'm going to, by holding out longer whole notes, and I'm not, set on that particular pattern, but going from a pulsing beat into kind of a holding out pattern is going to help to just provide some change in the listening. So that's what I'm kind of thinking about for a bridge section there. Now finally, for an absolute switch, my ultimate goal for this is I want to have two different sections, and I want to just kind of alternate between. Now when I say section, I do mean sections with subsections. So in my first part, I want to have kind of a main driving beat, and then I want to have a bridge. And I want that to compose the first piece or first chunk of this song. And then I really do want to have a completely different feel for a second chunk, but I still want them to flow into each other. So for the second chunk, I really do need, I want a different drum beat. I want to kind of change the rhythmic pattern. I don't want to change the tempo. I want the same pulsing beat through the whole thing, but I do want to change the rhythm. I'm going to have the guitar riff parts change and the solo part change. So I've been kind of playing around with different things. So right now we've got this really just kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of a thing. And now if I switch that up, if I go to another kind of feel, you get this offbeat thing, and which I really like. So to have this really driving on-beat first section transition to an offbeat second section, I really like that feel. So for a bass line for that, I was thinking I want to keep it in A, but instead of a pulsing, I need to do something different. I need to have offbeat things. So maybe like, something just that off kind of rhythm thing to provide that difference. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about right now. Now for guitar parts for this, I was really thinking, the thought and the feel kind of popped in my head early on in thinking about this project of kind of those 80s hair metal bands, but only during the parts in the song where the singer would stop and they would switch over and let the kind of electric guitars take leads. And a lot of those bands, they would do this double electric lead where either the two electric players were playing exactly the same thing or they were harmonizing with each other. And so when I was starting to think about a melody line, that thought and that feel really popped into my head. So in order to kind of support that, we've already got the driving bass line, in the first section, and then we've got this off-tempo bass line in the second section. So to add to that, I want to just do some riffs, some chording riffs underneath that. And because I've kind of chosen this simple key of A, first and foremost, I'm just going to kind of riff on some A's, but I'm just going to do it really rhythmically. So something like that will really fit with that dum 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 dum, just trying to complement the bass line. And then halfway through that first section, I am going to switch. I'm going to throw in a D. Because I can also use that D and treat it like a D over A. So I can keep my bass line as simple as possible, still playing, just driving on that A, while my riff chords switch between A's and D's, and that'll kind of give it just a little bit more of a song kind of a feel. Now for the second section, kind of my second distinct part where I'm going to switch up the rhythm and the bass line and everything like that, I also want to switch up the riff and switch up the groove. Now I was still thinking, I want this whole thing to feel cohesive, so I'm still firmly in 80s hair metal type of band. So to fulfill that, I wanted to just switch over to some power chords, that basically just move along and follow or mimic some of those offbeat kind of a thing. So for example, I'm going to kick it down probably and play more of the bridge pickups, harsher kind of in your face thing. So now. Something like that, and over top of that drum beat, and I'll get the fills in there, make sure that the drum fills all happen at the right time. But to me, I'm really liking that kind of juxtaposition where we have this driving section that transitions into that. So now on to thinking about some solo lines. Okay, so for this first section, the real driving section at the beginning, I wanted to come up with a melody line. And as I said before, I'm planning on doubling up this melody. So I'm going to record it twice, myself playing the exact same thing, or at least as close to the exact same thing. And then I'm going to run both of those tracks panned, hard left and hard right in the mix. And that's what I've discovered a long time ago. I've seen other people use this as a quick trick to really fill out the sound and make it sound like there's more than one guitarist playing. Even though I try to play the same thing, what always happens, there's subtle differences between the takes, and those differences kind of add together to make it sound like there's more than one person playing. So with that, remember we're in this. That's the kind of section I'm thinking. So I want this soaring kind of high melody line. So I was playing around with some ideas here. Something really high like that. Up there, I'm repeating that phrase, that little lick over and over again to kind of get that repetition that's important for this song. And then switching over, then to go to a bridge section, you can kind of stay in there, but you go to a different tone in the scale. So if that's where I'm focusing most on, then I'll go up to maybe the... By moving up to that higher note, we can start to kind of take the focus up there and then come back down. So I'm really liking something like that for the first section. Okay, so for this second section, kind of a melody or a lead line over this offbeat riff kind of thing that we got going, I was starting to think I wanted to differentiate and come up with a different sound, a slightly different sound than we had in the first part. So I've actually added a flanger, a gray flanger over the top of this. So it's got that warbly kind of sound to it now. So it's got all the really subtle warbly thing, but I'm liking this. I was playing around with that kind of a line where kind of having some of those sweeps, those intervals coming down. But to me, that kind of an idea really sounds like it'll fit. And then to finish off that line, and walking it back up at the end of this line would then allow us to kind of again get that repetition, because I could then repeat maybe that first section without the effect on there. So that's kind of what I'm thinking now for that final piece. All right, well, I've kind of thought through each of the different sections that I want to have in this song, and now we're ready to put it all together. So I'm going to start tracking these and getting them just the way I want, maybe make some last adjustments to the riffs or the melody lines. And then to end this, now I know for the track that I'm going to send to my department, this is going to have to be like 13 to 15 minutes long, because that's how long we're planning our video. But for you guys, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut together the final finished performance of each of the sections kind of all together in one, and then you can kind of hear, hopefully, how repeating these sections and kind of doubling up, turning 8 bars into 16, that kind of thing, can really fill up time and space. And then ultimately, playing something like this at low volume behind interviews and other types of things can really kind of achieve what we set out to do. So with that in mind, I hope you enjoy this performance.